And now from TreasureIslandOldies.com, here's this week's rock and roll news. We start this week's rock and roll news with the latest of 5 stars passing away. Country crossover star Claude King, best remembered for his top 6 pop hit song, Wolverton Mountain in 1962, was found dead at his Shreveport, Louisiana home on the 7th of March. He was 90 years old. Canadian country folk singer Stompin' Tom Connors, whose toe-tapping musical spirit and fierce patriotism established him as one of Canada's biggest cultural icons. He died on the 6th of March at age 77. Alvin Lee, guitarist and lead singer with 10 Years After, died on the 6th of March of complications following what was called routine surgery. He was 68. Formed in Nottingham, England in 1962 as the Jaybirds, the group eventually moved to London and changed its name to 10 Years After in 1966, 10 years after the rise of Elvis Presley. Jewel Akins, best remembered for his top 3 hit single, The Birds and the Bees, from 1965, died the 1st of March in Los Angeles from complications from back surgery at the age of 79. We will be continuing with a tribute to these artists all throughout this week's Treasure Island Oldies radio show at TreasureIslandOldies.com. In other news, Sir Paul McCartney was knighted by Britain's Queen Elizabeth at Buckingham Palace this week in 1997. Jimmy Saunz from the Shadows of Night was arrested for distributing cocaine in 1962. In 1996, the remaining Beatles turned down a $225 million offer to do a reunion tour. The Supremes received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1994. In 1963, Manfred Mann held their first concert as the Man Hug Blues Brothers, and it took place at the Marquee Theatre in London. Paul McCartney married Linda Eastman this week in 1969, and this week also in 69, George Harrison was arrested for possession of marijuana. John Lennon and Harry Nilsson were thrown out of the Troubadour nightclub in Los Angeles for heckling the Smothers Brothers, who were performing there in 1974. Eric Clapton left the Yardbirds in 1965. An emergency plane landing in a South Bend, Indiana field nearly killed the Kingston Trio this week in 1959. Bob Seger received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1988. Elvis Presley's Charo film opened this week in 1969. Jerry Marsden from Jerry and the Pacemakers was fined £60 for evading British customs with a German-bought guitar in 1963. Viewers on American Bandstand in 1959 voted Fabian as the most promising new talent. Petula Clark made her American television debut this week in 1965 on The Ed Sullivan Show. The movie Rock Around the Clock, that starred Bill Haley, the Platters, and Freddie and the Bellboys, had its premiere in Washington, D.C. this week in 1956. The first official gold record ever was awarded this week in 1958 to Perry Como for Catch a Falling Star. Colonel Tom Parker officially became Elvis Presley's manager this week in 1956. Tower Records released Freddie and the Dreamers' I'm Telling You Now in the U.S. this week in 1965. The album Bobby Darin Sings Ray Charles was released this week in 1962. And in 2002, Connie Francis sued her record label for over $10 million for unpaid royalties and also for inappropriate licensing of her recordings. In the studio, Grand Funk Railroad recorded Closer to Home in 1970. Buddy Holly and the Crickets recorded Maybe Baby in 57. Ricky Nelson cut Travelin' Man in 61. The Chords recorded the classic Shaboom in 1954. In 1955, Fats Domino recorded Ain't That a Shame. And in 1966, Sandy Posey cut Born a Woman. Birthdays for you this week: Dean Torrance from Jan and Dean is 73, Cheryl Lynn 56, Katie Kassoon from Mac and Katie Kassoon is 62, Little Johnny Taylor born in 1943, Lawrence Welk born 1903, Art Todd along with his wife Dottie, they were a great duo together. He was born this week in 1914. James Taylor is 65, Paul Kantner from Jefferson Airplane is 70, Leonard Chess from Chess Records, born in 1917. Neil Sedaka turns 74 this week. Songwriter Mike Stoller, who wrote songs such as Hound Dog, Kansas City, most of the hits for the Coasters, along with Jerry Lieber. He's having a birthday and he's 79. Our senior citizen this week is Phil Phillips, turning 82. Quincy Jones, the producer, is 78. Rick Dees is 63. Mike Love from the Beach Boys is 72. Sly Stone is 69. Nancy Wilson from Heart is 59. Betty Johnson is 81. And Michael Murphy is turning 68. And from TreasureIslandOldies.com, that's your rock and roll news for this week. Remember to come for all the late-breaking news to the Treasure Island Oldies blog. You can get to it by going to TreasureIslandOldies.com and click blog. I'm Michael Godin.
Treasure Island Oldies.